Welcome. Today we are going to look at C.R.E. Revision 50, Paper 1. Thanks a lot for subscribing. Question 1a. Identify the attributes of God as portrayed in Genesis stories of creation. B. Explain the relationship between the human beings and the environment. C. Give 5 ways in which Christians consult the environment today. Question 2a. Explain 7 ways in which Abraham demonstrated his faith in God. B. Give 4 differences between Jewish and traditional African practices of circumcision. C. Give reasons why the church is against female genital mutilation. Question 3a. Give 6 roles of judges in Israel. B. Describe the nature of the Canaanite religion. C. Identify problems faced by church leaders today in their efforts to condemn evil. Question 4a. Outline the characteristics of false prophets in the Old Testament. B. State the teachings of Prophet Amos on election. C. Explain how church leaders are put to test today. Question 5a. Outline the characteristics of the new covenant as foreseen by Prophet Jeremiah. B. With reference to Jeremiah's teaching, describe how the Israelites were encouraged to live in hope during the Babylonian exile. C. How do Christians give hope to those who are suffering in the society? Question 6a. Explain the importance of kinship in African traditional community. B. Identify 4 factors that promoted unity in traditional African society. C. What has led to the breaking of kinship ties in modern Africa? Answers. Question 1a. Identify the attributes of God as portrayed in Genesis stories of creation. God is the sole creator and the only source of life. God is eternal, immortal. God is spirit. God is living and has intellect and will. God is God of order. God is source of goodness. God is a moral God. God is holy. God is the provider. God is all-powerful or omnipotent. God is supreme. God is to be worshipped. God is all-knowing, omniscient. God is everywhere, omnipresent. Question 1b. Explain the relationship between human beings and the environment. Both human beings and environment were created by God, that is, they have a common origin. Human beings are superior to all other creatures. Human beings should take care of the environment. Human beings have authority of the rest of creation. Human beings should subdue the earth. Human beings should enjoy God's creation. That is, the rest of creation was made for the human beings. All creation is very good. Human beings should treat the rest of creation with reverence and respect. Human beings and the rest of God's creation have common destiny. Human beings and the environment are independent. That is, they're there for the existence of each other. Question 1c. Give 5 ways in which Christians conserve the environment today. Church leaders should be in the forefront in teaching the Christians to conserve the beauty and sanctity of the environment as God-given duty and service to God. Christians should be role models in their conservation of the environment by planting trees in their parcel of lands and church compounds, proper disposal and management of garbage, as well as obeying all environmental laws. Report to authorities those who are involved in the destruction of environment, for example, those who destroy forests, pollute water bodies by dumping toxic waste. They should teach others the need and importance of preserving, rescuing, and caring for the environment. They should make contributions towards the preservation, protection, and caring for the environment in terms of money, time, ideas, and equipment. They should participate in conservation projects, for example, planting trees, digging terraces, gardens, cleaning the environment. They should avoid buying and using products made from materials obtained through destruction of the environment, for example, game, trophies, charcoal, and by refusing to participate in activities leading to the destruction of the environment. By observing personal hygiene and cleanliness, participate in volunteer cleaning exercises of towns, hospitals by emptying dustbins and rubbish pits, clearing drainage systems and properly disposing the collected garbage as an example to the entire public to follow. By participating in formulation of laws that protect the environment, for example, conservation of forests, planting of trees in the private-owned parcels of land. Question 2a. Explain 7 ways in which Abraham demonstrated his faith in God. He abandoned the idol worship to serve Yahweh, the true God. He accepted to leave Haran to unknown land in obedience to God's call. He built altars at Bethel and Shechem in honor of God. He entered into a covenant with God. He accepted circumcision as a sign of the covenant. Abraham got circumcised together with his son and servants by sacrificing the animals in the covenant making. He accepted to change their names. Abraham changed to Abraham, the father of the great nation. Sarai changed to Sarah, which means the mother of the great nations. He agreed to sacrifice his beloved son Isaac when God instructed him to do so. He worshipped God in prayer, sacrifice, and intercession. He believed in fulfillment of God's promises, for example, the promise that his descendants would be many. Question 2a. Give 4 differences between Jewish and traditional African practices of circumcision. The Jewish people circumcise their sons during childhood, when the boy is 8 years old, while in traditional African society it is done during puberty. It was an act of obedience to Yahweh for the Jewish people, while it was a rite of passage for both boys and girls in traditional African community. It was a change of status from childhood to adulthood in traditional African community, while in Jewish culture it was not, as the boys were too young, that is, they were 8 days old. The circumcised were secluded for a time for the purpose of healing and to be taught the customs, traditions of their people in traditional Africa. This was not the case with the Jewish people because the boys were still too young for any kind of teaching. It was a demonstration of faith in God for the Jewish people, while it was a commitment to traditional customs and regulations in traditional African communities. It was a mark of the covenant between God and the all Israelites, while it bound the initiate with ancestors in traditional African communities. Question 2c. Give reasons why the church is against female genital mutilation. It can lead to infections due to use of same instruments. It is not allowed in the Bible, unlike the male circumcision that is commanded. It is destruction of what God termed as very good according to the Christian accounts. It can lead to disagreements, even separation and divorce in family. It is a violation of human rights. That is, it is against human rights. It can lead to injury of the reproductive organs of the initiate. It can cause psychological torture or traumatizes the initiate. It can lead to bleeding and death of the initiate. That is, it endangers the health of the girl child. It is against the law. Basically, it is illegal because female genital mutilation has been outlawed in Kenya. It can lead to early marriages. It can lead to school dropout. Question 3. Give 6 roles of judges in Israel. They anointed kings. For example, Samuel, who anointed King Saul and David. Some of the judges acted as God's prophets. For example, Samuel and Deborah. They acted as religious leaders and led the Israelites in worship. They settled disputes among people. For example, Deborah. They led the Israelites to war against their enemies. For example, Gideon and Deborah. They were mediators between God and his people. They were warriors. For example, Samson. They acted as political leaders. 3b. Describe the nature of Canaanite religion. It was polytheistic, worshipped many gods and goddesses. It had many prophets and prophetesses, offered human sacrifices alongside animal sacrifices, practiced temple prostitution as a ritual for cleansing barrenness, built sanctuaries and high places for idol worship, had feasts and festivals to celebrate harvest and appease the gods. It was a cyclic religion. Its practices followed seasons. It was a nature religion. This means that it was related to the forces of nature, for example, rain, drought. Symbols were used to represent each god. For example, Baal was represented in form of a bull and stone pillar. Canaanite gods were represented by physical symbols or images, which made it appear more practical and close to people. It was a cyclic religion, which means that the seasons were repeated in contrast to Yahwism, which was linear. 3c. Identify 6 problems faced by the church leaders today in their effort to condemn evil. Political interference, state rigidity and lack of political goodwill, question of their morality. Some church leaders are too morally corrupt to be taken seriously by people. They are poor role models. Lack of church unity, that is ecumenism, to forge a common effort towards condemning evil. Lack of finances to mount awareness campaigns to enlighten the masses on evil practices. Lack of support from families due to permissiveness. Negative influence from the media. Influence from Western cultural practices. Lust for wealth. Influence of science and technology in disproving the existence of God, who is the foundation of morality. Personal weakness based on little exposure and training. Influence of traditional beliefs. Question 4a. Outline the characteristics of false prophets in the Old Testament. Their prophecies never came to pass. They didn't receive visions from God. They gave false hopes to the people. They were after pleasing those people in authority. They challenged and attacked the true prophets. They served gods apart from God. They used evil forces like magic. They never condemned evil in the society. Question 4b. State the teachings of Prophet Amos on election. Israel was chosen as a special people whom God would use to make mankind know him. God chose Israel out of his love for her forefather, that is Abraham, so they were not to be proud because God could have chosen any other nation. Israel was chosen to serve failure, to which they would be punished. The election gave them a responsibility to obey because they were God's nation. Being chosen did not mean any special treatment or exemption from punishment. As the elect people, God had done great things for them. For example, delivered them from Egyptian bondage and destroyed their enemies like Amalekites. God raised prophets and Nazarites among Israelites. Despite God's favor, the Israelites rebelled against God. That is, they silenced prophets and forced Nazarites to drink wine. Question 4c. Explain how church leaders are put to test today. Human suffering, which hinders people from accepting the message of hope. Lack of cooperation from the congregation and other leaders. Problems of how to react or relate objectively when the expectations are not met. Inadequate knowledge on how to deal with various groups. There are temptations to acquire property unjustly. Too much time is expected out of them. Inability to control their human desires, for example, sexuality. Be in an environment that is hostile. Difficulties in harmonizing the message of the gospel and innovations of science and technology. Question 5a. Outline the characteristics of the new covenant as foreseen by Prophet Jeremiah. The new covenant will be universal. The new covenant will be everlasting. The laws will be written on people's hearts. God will be their God, and they shall be his people. The new covenant would establish a new beginning. The new covenant would be established, or the new covenant would establish a new Israel. The new covenant would be initiated by God himself. God would forgive their sins and remember them no more. The new covenant would be established after God's punishment of Israel. Everyone would know God personally by giving them new here to know him. Everyone will be responsible for his sins. That is, there will be individual responsibility for those who sin. Question 5b. With reference to Jeremiah's teachings, describe how the Israelites were encouraged to live in hope during the Babylonian exile. The letter to exiles, Jeremiah wrote them a letter telling them to live in peace with the Babylonians, not to listen to false prophets, and to wait for God's time. For after 70 years, God would take them back to their land. Jeremiah advised the Israelites to lead a normal life, that is, marry, raise families, engage themselves in farming, and seek the peace of the places they are residing. The two basket of figs. The focus is on the basket with good, ripe, sweet figs. These represented the Israelites who were deported to Babylon. God promised to punish them, restore them back to their land, and prosper them. Purchasing of land. Jeremiah bought land in Jerusalem, a fixed property. He had a title deed for the land as an assurance of legitimate ownership. This symbolized hope and restoration for those who would come back and reclaim their land. God would rebuild them up from their evils. The new covenant. Jeremiah talked about a new covenant that God would enter into with the Israelites after punishment. God would forgive their sins and remember them no more. Visit to the potter's house. Jeremiah saw a potter remount the pot into a new pot in the same way God would make Israel anew after exile in their own land. The wooden ox yoke. The wooden ox yoke symbolized that if people submitted to the Babylonians, God was going to rescue them by bringing the Babylonian rule to an end. God will then restore them back to their land. Future righteous king. In this message, Jeremiah prophesied about the righteous king who would rule the Israelites in justice and righteousness. This symbolized the end of Babylonian rule and the establishment of great Israel kingdom. Question 5c. How do Christians give hope to those who are suffering in the society? Pray for the suffering, offer guidance and counseling to those who are depressed, share the word of God with them, meet the needs of the suffering. For example, if they are suffering from sickness, buy them drugs. Encourage them to accept God, visit them in their homes or you visit them in the hospitals. Question 6a. Explain the importance of kingship in African traditional society. Unites members of family, clan and larger community by providing for their needs and giving them a sense of belonging and identity. It helps preserve cultural identity and expression, especially through rituals and beliefs. It defines social relationships and how people are expected to behave towards one another. It defines and identifies relatives, hence it enhances a sense of security and belonging, bringing about strong bonds among community members. It determines how certain ceremonies should be carried out. It defines and enforces duties and responsibilities of individuals, families and clans to the living and the dead. It brings people together during times of crisis. It helps people to establish new relationships, especially through marriage. It sets out punishment for misbehavior in the community. B. Identify 4 factors that promoted unity in traditional African society. Communal ownership of land. Belief in common ancestry. Religious beliefs and practices where people come together to worship God. Communal sharing of resources. Division of labor. Tasks performing according to sex, age, social status. Kinship ties define how individuals should relate to one another. Observance of social norms, taboos, customs were strictly observed. Rites of passage and rituals, for example, involving the whole community. Traditional education which taught individuals to be responsible members of the society. Political organization, there is a hierarchy in decision making within the family, or the clan, or the community. Leisure activities promoted togetherness. Question 6a. What has led to the breaking of kinship ties in modern Africa? Migration away from the ancestral land to other places. Basically modern education. Intermarriages or cross-cultural marriage. Christianity. Modern science and technology. Western culture or erosion of African culture. Urbanization. Did you understand? Kindly let me know in the comment section below. Also, let me know what video you can look at tomorrow. Thanks a lot for subscribing and listening to me. God bless you.